Hi, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. We've finished with the prologue, and now we're on the Knight's Tale. He's the first guy to speak up in this tale, and if you remember, they were gathered to go on a pilgrimage to Canterbury, and they decided to have a contest of who tells the best story. And the host is he's the guy who dreamt up this contest. So let's go. This is the first guy up, the knight. This is a 4-part tale. It's a long one. So, we're not going to read it all at once. This is part 1. The Knight's Tale. Before we start, I want you to remember point of view is very important in anything you read with Jimmy. So always consider the point of view of this story. When we talked about the prologue, we saw that the narrator is in the story. So this is a first-person narration. Some people say it was Chaucer talking. And other people say, well, it's just the first-person narrator, and we'll find out as we go along and read these. Ready? But this is the knight talking. So what you have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a story inside a story. It gets complicated a little bit. So it starts out, the prologue, it's Chaucer or a anonymous narrator narrating, saying, look at all these people that are here, and we gathered at a tavern, and now we're going to have a contest, and here's the knight. So the knight goes on. He's going to be the first one up. Once, as old stories tell, there was a prince named Theseus that in Athens ruled long since. And remember, this is poetry, so prince and since. There's going to be some rhyming going on. Iambic pentameter. We talked about that in our little introduction, I think. If not, we will. A conqueror in his time, for rich lands won, there was no greater underneath the sun. He took the realm once known as Scythia and married its brave queen, Hippolyta, and brought her home in high festivity and her younger sister, Emily. So his wife is Hippolyta and her sister is Emily, and Theseus is her husband, Hippolyta's husband. And but for trying the most patient ear, make no doubt of it, I should let you hear in full how Theseus came to overwhelm, together with his knights, this woman's realm. And in a great battle that was thus brought on between Athenian and Amazon, and how he made his conquest of the queen, and all the feasting and the marriage scene, and how at their return a great storm broke. But feeble are the oxen in my yoke, and large enough the field I have to plow. These things I must forbear to tell for now. I won't deprive another of his turn. Remember, this is the knight talking to people. He says he's going to tell you all about this, but he doesn't want to overshadow the other. He wants to give everybody a shot, right? I won't deprive another of his turn. Each tell his tale, and let's see who can earn his supper at the tavern for his story. And there's the bet. So this Theseus coming home in all his glory, when nearly in town became aware, glancing from side to side, that kneeling there, right in the highway, as his troop rode through, was a company of women, 2 by 2, and each after each, and all were clad in black. And how they shrieked, as if the sky would crack, such cries that not a soul in all creation had ever heard an equal lamentation, and would not stop from shrieking out their pains until they had seized the conqueror's bridle reins. So it comes across 2 by 2 women marching, and they're shrieking. Quote, "What company are you that so surprise my coming home with your distracting cries?" Theseus demanded. "Do you envy so my honors that you utter with this great woe? Or have you been mistreated or offended? And tell me whether it can be amended, and why you have thus dressed yourselves in black." The eldest of them, after falling back in a swoon, her face so deathly white, it was a truth in pitiable sight. She said, quote, Prince, whom fortune has been pleased to give triumph, and as a conqueror to live, your honor and your glory nowise grieve us. But we beseech you, pity and relieve us. Have mercy on our grief and our distress. Some drop of pity in your gentleness. On wretched women, on us let fall, for truly, Prince, not one among us all, but she has been a duchess or a queen, not wretches, as too plainly can be seen, since fortune's fickle wheel, by which we fell, assures us no lot, it shall continue well. And in all truth, until you should appear in the temple of the goddess Mercy here, this fortnight we have waited hour by hour. So now help us, for it lies within your power. I, wretch, who weep and wail before you thus, was once the wife of King Capanus, who was destroyed at Thebes. Cursed be the day, and all of us who blacken so your way. Let's stop for a moment. I got a couple of notes here. So Chaucer he read and influenced Dante's Divine Comedy. Jimmy, in fact, may read a translation of that one day if he hasn't already. It's a great, great Italian, just a great, great epic. So he had actually read that, and Chaucer frequently cited and quoted Dante. And so that's what we call allusions when he alludes to these things. Capaneus, who had committed violence against God, was one of the 7 kings who besieged Thebes. He defied Jupiter and was killed by a thunderbolt. Dante describes him as lying proud and disdainful, apparently unaffected by the flames. In the Divine Comedy, it's a descent into hell. I don't want to dwell on that because the knight is actually sharing this with people who understood that too, because these are educated people. And remember, not everybody had books in these days. So he's telling a story and he's painting a picture with words. Got it? By the way, if you have questions, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Let's continue. So these women are basically saying, oh, have mercy on us, Theseus, who's returning, right? The conqueror. And raise such lamentations with your pity. We lost each one her husband at that city. And yet, old Creon, in his tyranny, confirmed in anger and antiquity, lord of the town, to show his fierce disdain on the dead bodies of our lords, their slain, has in one single pile their bodies tossed, and will not suffer them at any cost to be burned or buried, but they lie unkempt, and they make his dogs to go eat in contempt. So in those days, you defile the bodies. You want to burn the bodies, right? If you have seen the movie Troy, right? You don't want to leave bodies laying around. So apparently Creon did this. So the women are saying they defiled their husbands who are all dead. And with that word, they fell face down and cried, quote, pity us, wretched women, in your pride, and let your sorrow sink into your heart. This kindly prince, for all his conqueror's part, he leaped from his horse straightway when they had spoken. He felt as though his very heart were broken to see them in such a pitiable state, who in their time had shone among the great. He took them in his arms to give them cheer, and he drew them up and made his good will clear, swearing his oath, as he was a true knight, that he would give an insistence of his might, and he would on Creon such a vengeance wreak that people everywhere in Greece would speak of how the tyrant had been richly served, at one whose death had fully been deserved. And so at once, with no more delay, he spread his banner and he rode off straightaway toward Thebes, with his army by his side. Nor into Athens would he wait to ride, nor take his ease as much a half a day, but he camped that very night well on his way. And he sent the queen to Athens, and there to be with her beautiful young sister, Emily. So he goes off to get Creon, sends his wife and sister somewhere else, to Athens. The image of red Mars, now Mars is the god of war, always associated with red. It's called the red planet nowadays, right? The image of red Mars, with spear and shield, gleams from his banner on a broad white field. Remember, he's painting a picture with words, right? There's no television, there's no radio, there's nothing except him. And he's telling this to the people. So that the meadows glisten all about, and by his banner, his pennon ripples out. That's a long triangular swallow-tailed flag. You see some of this when you watch medieval movies like Ivanhoe. Pinion. Of richest gold in which was work complete, the Minotaur that he had slain in Crete. Who's he? Theseus slayed the Minotaur. That is the half man, half beast, right? Remember, those are called allusions. Allusions, allusions, because most of the people, when he talks like this, know that. Now, if you don't know what a Minotaur is, and you don't know that Theseus slayed the Minotaur, you're going to lose some appreciation from this. And remember, we read literature, classic literature, is language charged with meaning. So if you don't know what a Minotaur is, you lose a little meaning. So it's all up to all of us to educate ourselves on these mythology stories, which I've covered on my website in places. So rode this prince, so rode this conqueror among his knights, the very flower of war, until at Thebes they drew up to alight, ranked in the field on which they meant to fight. But truly, to make short work of this thing, that tyrant Creon, who in Thebes was king, he fought and slew him bravely as a knight in a headlong battle, and put his troops to flight. And by assault he took the town thereafter, and he broke down every wall and beam and rafter. And to the ladies he restored again the bones of all their husbands who were slain, to do the last rites that were then in use. When he had taken Thebes, this Prince Theseus, all night he rested in the field at leisure and ravaged the whole country at his pleasure, ransacking the heaped bodies of the dead. After the foe had been discomfited, the looters got to work with busy cheer, stripping the corpses of their clothes and gear. So Theseus's men are stripping away Creon's troops. They're just devastating them, right? And so it happened that in the heap they found, pierced through with many grievous wounded, bloody wounds, 2 young knights, side by side. Their arms the same. Arcite and Palamon, they were by name. So when they're destroying all these bodies and pillaging them, they find these 2 young knights side by side, wounded, bloody wounded, and their arms the same. They're engaged. It's Arcite, right? Arcite and Palamon, 2 knights. Ladies and gentlemen, a hint, these are the keys to this knight's story. So this is a long wind-up to get to these 2 knights. Arcite. It depends how you want to pronounce this, Arcite, right? Arcite, Palamon. Not quite alive, and yet not quite dead they were. But by their armor, the heralds knew them for 2 royal Thebians, of 2 sisters born. And out of the heap, the looters had them torn and had them gently carried to the tent of Theseus. And he, Theseus, promptly saw them sent to Athens in a prison to be kept for life. No ransom would the prince accept, and so rode home the laureled conqueror to live his life out in the spoils of war, and in a tower, and in anguish and despair, no gold can set them free, the youthful pair. So he basically sentenced them to life imprisonment, right? So the narrating continues. So passes year by year and day by day, till once it happened at the break of May, Emily, who was fairer to be seen than lilies rising on their stalks of green, and she was fresher than the May when flowers are new, and she contented with the rose and hue. She was dressed before the sun had shown its head, and for a May night will have no slug a bed. A lazy person who stays in bed at night, in bed late rather, pardon me. So the narrator is saying that Emily is not a lazy. She's up. The season pierces every tender heart. The season, what season? Spring. What's spring? It's a time of love, right? The May night, the season pierces every tender heart and prods it out of slumber with a start and says, arise, do service to the spring. In other words, come on, it's spring, get out there, fall in love. It was no wonder then, remembering the honors of the season, that she should rise and clothe herself, a marvel to the eyes. Her yellow hair was braided in a truss, behind her back a yard long, I should guess. She had long hair. In the garden, as the sun rose on the town, as fancy pleased her, she walked up and down. She plucked particular-colored flowers, white and red, to make a delicate garland for her head. And like an angel, she sang a heavenly song. The castle tower was so thick and strong that the dungeon where the knights were kept, all their lives in prison, ran along the wall. And where Emily enjoyed the air of May, bright was the early sun and clear that day. And Palamon, with reason enough to grieve, he rose, and by custom, and was his jailer's leave, he strode up and down a room at such a height that it brought the whole noble city into sight. And the garden also, with its boughs of green, where Emily stood, her pleasure in the scene. The wretched prisoner, pacing to and fro, protesting to himself his heavy woe, quote, that ever he had been born, he cried, alas. And so it happened that his glance must pass right through a slit, which thick bars studded the well, until on Emily his vision fell. And he paled, and he cried out, ah, as if his heart had felt a sting. And Arcite, with a start, leaped up and said, what made you fetch that breath? What ails you now? You look as pale as death. Who offended you? For God's love, cousin, take with patience that we live in prison. For otherwise it simply cannot be. Fortune has dealt us this adversity. Saturn, God, says Jupiter's god, Juno's father, has given Zeus's father, has given us our sad condition. Through evil aspect by the stars' position, no matter what denials may be sworn. So stood the eternal heavens when we were born. In other words, we were doomed to be here. We must endure it. That's the long and short. This Palamon said sharply in retort, cousin, if you so judge my situation truly, you show a vain imagination. This prison did not cause my bitter cry, but I wonder just now through the eye, down to my heart, yes, a wounded fatality, the beauty of that lady whom I see in that garden yonder, roaming to and fro, that is the cause of my outcry and of my woe. Woman or goddess, I can't tell, well perceive, but it was truly Venus, I believe. Venus was the goddess of love. And speaking thus, Palamon fell down on his knees and he cried out, quote, Venus, if indeed you please, here in this garden by transfiguration, to show yourself to the worst wretch, me, in creation, help us out of this prison to escape. And if the eternal word my fate should shape to die, imprisoned in this luckless fashion, look on our lineage with some compassion that has been brought so low by tyranny. And with that word, Arcite began to see the garden where the lady to and fro was walking. And her beauty hurt him so that if this Palamon was wounded sore, Arcite was hurt just as much as he, or more. And with a cry, he piteously said, "The freshness of her beauty suddenly has slain me. She who walks in yonder place, unless I have her mercy and her grace, at least to see her, I may as well be dead." And this Palamon in answer frowned and said, "You meant in earnest what I just now heard, or is it a joke?" "In earnest, on my word." "God knows," said Arcite, I've got no mind to joke." This Palamon wrinkled up his brows and he spoke, quote, "It would not make your honor any greater," he said, "if you were false or played the traitor. To me, cousin, and your brother in oath, pledged solemnly and sworn as we are both, that never till death itself should part us two, for all the tortures men might put us through, should either of us in love forestall the other now, nor in any situation, my dear brother, but faithfully that you should further me, as I should you, whatever the case may be. This was the oath you swore, and so did I. But for certain, and you'll never dare deny, that you ought to help my purpose, past all doubt. And here your treacheries set about to love my lady, whom I serve and cherish, and ever shall until my heart must perish, not you, false Arcite. Let that be truth plain. I loved her first, and to you I told my pain, and to you, my confidant, as I said before, my brother, through the solemn oath you swore, by reason of which you owe it, as a knight, to help me, if it lies within your might, or else you are a traitor among men." So Palamon is saying, look it, I saw her first. So you got to help me. You're a knight, I'm a knight. We swore a oath to each other, right? So I saw her first. Now you got to help me. You got to help me with this lady. And Arcite haughtily spoke back again. He said, you should be called the traitor more than I. Traitor you are. And let me tell you why. By all the laws of love, I loved her first. What can you say? You don't know yet what burst upon your sight. You don't know if it's a goddess or a woman. Your love is spiritual, but mine is human. And so, my brother, sworn brother, I spoke of her. But put it that your love was earlier, well, you must have often heard the wise old saw, what man can give a lover any law? Love's law, by all the wit in my brain pan, is greater than any given to earthly man. Hence, man-made laws are over and over again broken for love, and by all ranks of men. A man must love, although it cost his head. He can't escape it, not though he was dead. Whether she is a virgin, widow, or wife, besides, you are unlikely all your life to win her favor, no more than I. In prison, unransomed, we're both doomed to die. As the dogs did for the bone, so we contend, they fought all day for nothing in the end. For while they snarled so fiercely for their prey, there came a kite and bore the bone away. That's an old proverb holds with us at court, my brother. Each for himself must be the rule, and no other. Love, if you like. Okay, I love, and I ever shall. In sober truth, dear brother, that is all. In prison we must suffer and endure, and each must bide his chance, that much is sure. Great was the strife, and long between these two, which but for a time I could describe to you. So the knight is now taking a break and saying these guys are arguing about this woman, but they're pretty much doomed because they're in prison. But for the effect, it happened on a day, to tell it as briefly as I may, a worthy prince, Pythoreus by name, a childhood friend of Prince Theseus, came to Athens, where he often made a stay, for no two loved each other more than they. And in truth, when one had died, as the old books tell, his fellow went and sought him down into hell. So there's another allusion of what Prince Theseus' friend Pythias does. He goes down to hell and seeks. So you should read that sometimes. For many years, Pythias had known Arcite at Thebes. And now, through him alone, Theseus, in answer to his friendly plea, without a ransom, let Arcite go free, on a promise that if Arcite should be found, one instance ever, by day or night, on ground where Theseus ruled, a sword should have his head. So Arcite took his leave, and home he sped. So here's what's going on here, right, ladies and gentlemen? We have these two knights that swore an oath to each other, but Pythias, Theseus' friend, comes over and gets Arcite released, right? How great a sorrow suffers Arcite now. Cold through his very heart he feels death. Wow. Now you'd think he'd be happy, right? He's getting free, right? But he's not. With groans and piteous cries, he's distraught. To kill himself is in his secret thought. Alas, Arcite said, if only I had never been brought to birth. My prison is worse than ever, for I am doomed eternally to dwell, now not in purgatory, but in hell. Pythias, on a black day when we first met, because without you I should still be in Athens yet, in prison, chained forever. But even so, I should have been in bliss and not in woe. Because the mere sight of her beauty whom I serve, although her grace I never may deserve, would have well answered and sufficed for me. Oh, dear cousin Palamon, said he, yours is the triumph truly in this case. You may endure content in your dungeon's place. Dungeon? Ha! It's not. It's rather paradise, because yours is the lucky turn of fortune's dice. You have the sight of her, and I the lack. And since false fortunes often change track, and you, a lusty knight whose worth is plain, sometime to your desire you may attain. But I, in barren exile and despair, no element, earth, water, fire, or air, nor any creature of their composition may help or comfort me in my condition. I have good cause to die in hopelessness. Farewell, my life, my love, my happiness. Alas, why is it so common to complain of God or fortune, who so often deign, hiding their foresight under many a guise, to give us better than we could devise? One man sets all of his heart on gaining wealth, for which he is murdered, or he gives up his health. And another from his prison cell would fly, in his own house by servants' hands to die. Infinite mischief comes to by this door. Man hardly knows what he's praying for. Blind as a drunkard on his way he goes. A drunkard has a house, that much he knows. But what does he not know? In the way thither, on a dry road a drunken man will slither. And as he fares, so in the world fare we, seeking our happiness too eagerly, we often miss the mark. This is all philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go back and analyze that. Thus we all may say, the more so I, who thought that on the day I should escape from prison, I would be entirely in perfect felicity, perfect intense happiness. But now I am exiled from my joy instead, forbidden to see my love. I am but dead. His counterpart, this wretched Palamon, When he perceived that his fellow prisoner was gone, he grieved until the tower resounded with his din. And on the fetters of galled him at the shin, his tears fell bitter. He said, quote, "You have gained the fruit, cousin," he said. "God knows of our dispute. Even now in Thebes you walk about at large, and all of my woe on you is a light charge. Since you are wise and warlike, you can gather our people and our kindred all together and make so sharp a war upon this city, Athens, that by some lucky chance or by a treaty you may possess, even yet, as lady and wife, her for whose love I needs must lose my life. The balance is all yours by any gauge, rather than mine, who perish in this cage. For I must grieve as long as I shall live, with all the pain imprisonment can give, and the added pain of love, with no relief, which doubles all my torment and my grief." Unrequited love, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're talking about here. With that a jealous fire so made him start, Palamon, that he wrung him with his fierceness at his heart, that his crazed face as pale was to behold as boxwood or ashes, dead and cold. O cruel gods, on whom it is conferred to bind the world in your eternal word, and in your adamantine unbreakable tables write the edicts of your everlasting might. In what esteem, he cried out, do you hold man more than sheep who cower in their fold? A man like any other beast is slaughtered, and in prison likewise he is quartered. He suffers illness and misfortune blows, and many times is innocent, God knows. What reason is there in this providence that tortures and torments our innocence? This makes my grief a still more bitter brew. Man to his duty must always be true. For God's sake he must put curbs on his will, while beasts may freely all of their lusts fulfill. But when a beast is dead and he has no feeling, but man, though dead, must go on weeping and wailing, although in his world he is pinched in pain. Beyond a doubt it was so ordained. I leave the answer to theology. But in this world is found much misery. For here a thief or a serpent in the grass brings many a true man to an evil pass, and yet goes free to wander at his leisure, while I must be in chains through Saturn's pleasure and Juno's jealous madness, Juno, who destroyed the blood of Thebes and left it well nigh void, and cast the broken walls down waste and wide. And now Venus, goddess of love, kills me from the other side, for bitter jealousy and for my fear of him, my cousin, that I once held dear. The summer passes and the nights grow long, doubling the pains that were already strong, both in the lover and the prisoner. I do not know which one was woefuller, was really worse off. For Palamon faces perpetual doom to chains and fetters in his narrow room, to lie in prison till he should be dead. And Arcite, with a sentence on his head if he came back, remember, must dwell forever in exile among men, and never see his lady's face again. So there's the dilemma. One of them is in prison. He can see her, but he can't fulfill his love. And Arcite is banished, and he can't come back to see her because then he would die. You lovers, here's a case to ponder on, says the knight. Which of these two, Arcite or Palamon, has the worse lot? For one can every day look on his lady while he pines away in prison, while the other can ride free, and yet his lady never more shall see. You judge you like. Decide if you can, for I shall tell my tale as I began. Whoa, what a beautiful story, huh? So far, so good? Isn't this beautiful language, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't it? Now, we know we're being translated here, right? If we go back to the beginning, right? Who's translating this? Remember, we can't read this medieval stuff, right? I mean, we could, but it would take too long. Theodore Morrison is doing a great job, isn't he? He's doing a great job. A great, great, great job. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. There's lots of other classics on my website, but I want you to come in for part 2 of Reading with Jimmy, right? Before I leave you, I want to leave you with a little note. I did some experiment, right? So I asked AI, our friend AI, in The Knight's Tale, the characters, particular Palamon and Arcite, are portrayed as intensely passionate due to their concept. Remember, they only saw this lady, right? And suddenly they hate each other, they love her from a distance, which emphasizes idealization of beloved love, right? This is all triggered by their immediate and overwhelming love for Emily at their first sight. The key points about their passion, idealized love. Courtly love dictates that the beloved, remember this is medieval times, and you can look this up. These are some websites. You can pause me and go to the website. You can click this, because I don't know if you can click it on the video, but certainly you can look at this. So idealized love, right? Love at first sight. It wasn't always about sex, right? This was ideal loves, platonic love. These were knights who had a great ethical code. You should read about this. It's probably what sometimes is lacking in our country, right? The imprisonment adds to the passion by creating a sense of longing, blah, blah, blah. The knightly values of honor and loyalty fuel the determination to win her hand. They don't just want, they want to win her hand. They want to, right? Chivalric code. Chivalry. Look that word up. Chivalry. You've been reading with Jimmy. Come back again for part 2, 3, and 4. See you soon. Thanks for being here.